share our new website and digital edition with you. So what is MCO? Well, we are a charity. We were established to coordinate the project, which is to digitize, transcribe and annotate all the known surviving letters written by Elizabeth Montagu. There are over 4,000 of these letters, and somewhat to our alarm, we are discovering new ones all the time. We have also provided the funding to enable the Huntington Library to digitize its entire Montagu archive, and this includes nearly 3,000 further letters written to Montagu by a variety of her correspondents. And the facsimiles of these letters will be made available on the Huntington's website from the middle of next year. So first, let me introduce the MCO team, who I hope you can see down the side of your screen. First of all, we have our editor-in-chief, Nicole Pole, Professor of Literature at Oxford Brookes University. Nicole, many of you may know as the editor of the letters of Sarah Scott, many written, of course, to Elizabeth Montagu. Nicole is soon to embark on editing the letters from Montagu to Scott, of which there are over 700. So good luck, Nicole. I then move on to our general editors. First of all, Caroline Franklin, who recently retired as Professor of Literature at Swansea University. Caroline is also the editor of the letters to James Beattie, which will very soon be uploaded to our website. And next to her, quite appropriately, is Mike Franklin, Professor of English at Swansea University, who is the editor of the letters to Hester Thrale Piozzi, which we will be able to see today. And next, our consultant editor, Dr. Elizabeth Ager, Reader Emerita at King's College London. She is writing the first complete biography of Elizabeth Montagu, which of course is eagerly awaited. We then have our research assistants, first Dr. Jack Orchard from Swansea, and Dr. Anna Senku from Oxford Brookes, are vital parts of our team. And last but most certainly not least, we have Alexander Roberts, who is the Research, Data and Digital Humanities Manager at Swansea. Alexander has advised us on all the technical aspects of the project and designed and built the website that we are about to look at. So I will, without further ado, hand over to Caroline Franklin.
Oh, thank you, Joanna. Well, Nicole asked me to say a couple of words about how this project ever got started in the first place. And I should say it started about 10 years ago when I had a cup of tea with Elizabeth Ager, as blue stockings do. And she being the main expert on the woman of letters, Elizabeth Montagu, 1718 to 1800. We had a cup of tea. We had met when we were both involved in a large-scale scholarly project in London uncovering women's role in the Enlightenment. I, at that time, was interested in studying private correspondence in its own right as a genre. And I wanted to ask Elizabeth about Montagu's correspondence because I heard that she'd left an enormous cache of letters and asked her, was that the case? And I was excited to learn that, yes, indeed, there were around 8,000 letters extant to and from just about anybody who was anyone in the 18th century. And I got quite excited and I said, don't you think we should edit them? And Elizabeth gently told me that in her opinion, it couldn't be done. She then later introduced me to Nicole Pole, who it turned out had spent the last 10 years preparing a 2-volume print edition of the hundreds of letters of Elizabeth Montagu's sister, the novelist and reformer Sarah Scott. But as Elizabeth pointed out, a print edition of Elizabeth Montagu's letters would run to 25 volumes. So we thought again, and we thought it's got to be digital. It still sounded a bit crazy, but one factor made us think that it was doable. 6,973 of the letters were all in one place, which is quite unusual. They were all in one archive, and that was the Huntington Library in California. I think we've got a PowerPoint, I think, with a picture of Elizabeth Montagu and this beautiful portrait that we're looking at the moment. I think we've got a portrait of Sarah Scott on that PowerPoint somewhere, have we not?
Thank you. That's the Elizabeth Montagu one.
Which is it's a rather beautiful portrait, so just didn't want that one to go past, because on the next on the PowerPoint is a picture of Henry E. Huntington, not so beautiful, but very useful to our projects, because the US railroad magnate in the 1920s had been looking forward to establishing his legacy, and he decided to found a library of all his enormous collection of art and also manuscripts. And with a view to this, he went looking for large amounts of manuscripts and bought up all those of Elizabeth Montagu. He was absolutely delighted to find such a huge tranche of manuscripts. So in 2012, the three of us went off to California, and over another cup of tea, we persuaded the Huntington Library that digitization was really necessary to preserve those fragile papers. We asked the librarians when we were there how often the papers were in use, and they told us they were in use every day. There are so many feminist scholars wanting to examine those papers, and they had to travel all the way across to California to do so. So we had an energetic meeting in which the Huntington agreed to carry out at cost price the digitization of the entire archive, as long as they could keep a copy. Now, our project was then twice funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council, but one thing they would not pay for was the digitization itself. So over these years, we began to lose hope a little bit. But my colleague, Alexander Roberts, Digital Humanities Manager in Swansea University, told me he was eager to construct a platform hosting scholarly literary editions in Swansea. And he encouraged me at this juncture to go ahead with my mad project. So our team began editing the hundreds of Montagu letters that were held in UK archives to start with. Then in 2017, we were invited to tea again by private scholar and collector Joanna Barker, whom you've already met, who listened to our plans very carefully and decided to take a chance on our ambitious idea, and generously provided the funds for the digitization. Well, the Elizabeth Montagu Correspondence Online, or EMCO charity, was formed, and 3 years later from that day, we're up and running. Okay, back to you.
And you can see that it was ultimately, that's what we say within the group, it's ultimately Caroline's fault, really, that we're here and now employed for the next, I would judge, about 30 years, something like this. So we will be quite elderly by the time this is finished. The next person who will address all of you is Elizabeth Eager, who of course is the biographer of Elizabeth Montagu, and she will talk in a short video a little bit about Elizabeth Montagu, but also, because we were so kindly hosted by the Voltaire Foundation, her connection to Voltaire. So we could have the video, if that works, hopefully, Ambara. Thanks so much.
Nicole has asked me to say. Nicole Nicole has asked me to say a few words about who Montagu was and what she achieved. As her biographer, I find this harder rather than easier to answer the more of her letters I read. There were many Elizabeth Montagus. 18th century letter writing was a highly performative act and allowed for the creation of multiple parallel selves, each tailored to its recipient. As Montagu wrote to her sister in 1767, "I am a critic, a coal owner, a land steward, a sociable creature. One must write." She also wrote, "I cannot see how a sociable being can live without writing." Montagu was christened Queen of the Bluestockings by Samuel Johnson. She was famous in her lifetime as a Shakespeare critic, salon hostess, and champion of women's writing. She attracted the leading writers, politicians, and artists of her day to her sparkling London assemblies, where she placed a new emphasis on conversation as a pleasurable and enlightened pursuit. Her guests included the painters Joshua and Francis Reynolds, George Lord Lyttelton, David and Ava Garrick, William Pulteney, Earl of Bath, Horace Walpole, Edmund Burke and Elizabeth Carter, and later the younger generation of writers, Anna Letitia Barbauld, Hannah More and Fanny Burney. In her richly decorated London homes, Montagu aimed to bring together sensual and intellectual pleasure, and to allow talents of many kinds to flourish in an atmosphere that was free from the party politics that dominated court culture. Here Montagu nurtured a rising generation of metropolitan intellectuals. She was a public figure within 18th century culture, whose life not only illuminates the history of several important aspects and locations of her age, but also brings together a number of connected lives. As she wrote in a letter to her fellow Bluestocking hostess, Mrs. Vesey, in 1781, "We have lived with the wisest, the best, and the most celebrated men of our times, and with some of the best, most accomplished, most learned women of any times." How did Montagu achieve such a powerful position at the heart of several important networks of the age, with the ability to bestow favour in a regal manner? Her privilege was largely the result of her own incessant energy and social ambition. Born into the landed gentry as Elizabeth Robinson, she was nicknamed Fidget as a child, in honour of the liveliness of her mind and body. She married upwards in 1742 to Edward Montagu, grandson of the first Earl of Sandwich, a 50-year-old bachelor prone to solitude and with scholarly interests in mathematics. The birth of their only child, John, brought the couple great happiness. Elizabeth wrote some of her most intimate and personal letters about her son, whom she nicknamed Punch. When he died at the age of only 16 months, she was devastated. Perhaps to distract herself from her grief, she started to become involved in the management of her husband's numerous coal mines in Newcastle. First as a wife, and then during her long widowhood, Montagu oversaw the running of the estates with a shrewd head for business. By the end of her lifetime, Montagu Main was the second most expensive coal on the market, and her bank account at Hoare & Co. was transferred to the category reserved for the richest members of the aristocracy and institutions such as Eton College. Montagu combined attention to detail and daily pragmatism with a longer view of the social purpose and responsibilities of wealth, ploughing her coal money directly into her ambitious cultural projects. Her character and actions harnessed the energy and optimism, and also opportunism, of the age. Montagu's most profound legacy, however, was to advance the cause of female writing and education, both as a powerful patron and as a role model who defied contemporary expectations of her sex. For most women of her class, education was confined to the realms of accomplishment. If women did express intellectual interests, they were usually encouraged to hide them for fear of provoking disapproval from polite society and threatening their chances on the marriage market. As Montagu wrote to her friend the Earl of Bath, "Distinguished talents expose women to a great deal of envy and seldom assist them in making their fortunes. it is hard to say whether women remarkable for their understanding suffer most from the envy of their own sex or the malice of the other, but their life is one continual warfare. Despite her awareness of the potential difficulties that faced learned women, Montagu believed strongly that they should have an equal right to participate in intellectual culture. Her addiction to letter writing was matched by more formal literary ambitions. In 1769, she published an essay on the writings and genius of Shakespeare, compared with the Greek and French dramatic poets, with some remarks upon the misrepresentations of Monsieur de Voltaire. It was cleverly timed to coincide with Garrick's Shakespeare Jubilee. Montagu defended the role of mystery and religion in literature, as well as showing a particular appreciation of Shakespeare's use of the vernacular language, or mother tongue, which drew upon her status as a female critic who, like Shakespeare, had not been formally educated in the classical languages. She praised the psychological complexity and realism of Shakespeare's characters, in contrast to the rigid formalism of French neoclassical drama. The essay catapulted her to literary fame, and she became a national heroine. When she visited Paris in 1776, she was invited to attend a meeting of the Académie Française, at which Voltaire's defence of his position was to be read out. In a letter to Mrs. Vesey, Montagu described her impatience with the trash of Voltaire's argument, writing with striking self-confidence. "I was asked by an academician if I would answer this piece of Voltaire's, and I did not doubt but I could do it very well. I said that I remembered 60 years ago in the same academy old Homer had met with the same treatment as Shakespeare, that they now did justice to Homer. I did not doubt but they would do so for Shakespeare, for great geniuses survived those who set up to be their critics, or more absurdly, to be their rivals." Montagu's intervention in a public and nationalist debate consolidated her reputation and showed that women could compete as equals in the public literary sphere. As her fellow bluestocking Hester Thrale remarked, Montagu was brilliant in diamonds, solid in judgment, and critical in talk. Thrale's concise verdict captures Montagu's unique combination of intellectual and material brilliance, which attracted the admiration, envy, and scrutiny of many. Correspondence, which Montagu referred to as a kind of chatting on paper, was of crucial significance in establishing a sense of community amongst women. Montagu's indefatigable appetite for letter writing assumed the level of vocation central to her identity. On a practical level, the daily business of letter writing could incorporate a wide spectrum of experience, from the public to the private. In 1780, she referred to the labour of epistolary commerce. "In the course of 2 posts I had letters from a Polish prince, a great dealer in cattle, one of the most distinguished of our literati, my northern steward, a great Scotch philosopher, my head carpenter in Portman Square, the sweet minstrel Dr. Beattie, an artist at Birmingham, my bailiff at Sandalford, and many characters between these extremes." On a more intimate level, Montagu invested in letter writing as a means of exploring the expansive possibilities of self in the pursuit of a new language in which to express such possibilities. As she wrote to Elizabeth Carter in 1769, "We shall say what has not been said before."
Brilliant. Thank you, Lizzie, so much for this. We could have the next slide, perhaps, please, Anbara, if that's possible. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Lizzie already talked a little bit about who the Bluestockings were, and I just wanted to pick up on that a little bit. because I am sure that everyone who is attending this meeting knows this anyway. So the blue stockings is quite a complex term, really. And what we understand by this now is a group of intellectually minded men and women who assembled around Elizabeth Montagu, Elizabeth Vesey, and Frances Boscawen, first in the 1950s, that would be great, 1750s in London, Bath, and Dublin. But then it continued, of course, also well into the 1780s with the second generation of hostesses and societies in London and also the provinces. And these assemblies really differed from the traditional card playing gatherings by nurturing intellectual pursuits, polite conversation, philanthropic projects, and also publishing ventures amongst a mixed group of guests, including Elizabeth Carter, Lord Lyttelton, the Earl of Bath, Walpole, Frances Burney, Hannah More, and many more, including also Mary Hamilton. And I've noted that the people from the Mary Hamilton Project are also attending this launch, so welcome. I would support Emma Major's call to caution, really, however, that to say that the blue stockings were very much a uniform and a homogeneous group, because they weren't. So we are kind of using the term as an umbrella term, and I think more research needs to be done. As an aside also, Emma Major is joining the general editor's body of people and workers on this project, so welcome to her as well. In this digital project, we are focusing on Elizabeth Montagu and her social circles, of course, because we're using her letters as the basis of our work. So there were the blue stockings, but there were also a lot of other cross-cutting circles, which really made up polite society in 18th century England and Scotland as well. Montagu's life pretty much covered, it's very convenient for us, the 18th century. So her correspondence and also the topics of her letters and enclosures as well are a window into the history of the period. And Montagu, being Montagu, was in many ways a very good businesswoman, a very vain salon hostess. So she called the second generation of the blue stocking assemblies, for instance, the Blue Stocking Lodge, and she was slightly miffed and assumed them less intellectually prominent, really. You can see already in this little anecdote, which I have from a letter to Elizabeth Vesey in 1764, is that she was also a bit, shall we say, protective of her own role as a salon hostess, and also as someone who mingled into many different aspects of British society at the time. And I hope, and we all hope really, that making the letters available will generate more research into Montagu and her blue stocking circle, but also, which is the aim of this project as well, that we are making connections between other important writers and thinkers and salon hostesses as well across the country, but also to Europe. So why were they called the blue stockings? And this is where my fellow team members know I get a bit obsessive about this. The term blue stocking was first used in the 17th century to describe the plain attire of the members of the Little Parliament in 1653. And it was, of course, again, taken up to characterize Bishop Stillingfleet, who eschewed full dress at evening assemblies. So Frances Burney repeated the anecdote that when Stillingfleet was invited to Mrs. Vesey, he declined, saying, I haven't got the outfit right, I'm not properly dressed. And she said, don't mind dress, come in your blue stockings. The other anecdote, which also is repeated often in secondary literature, is that Admiral Boscawen called the assemblies of his wife, Frances Boscawen, also blue stockings, again talking about Stillingfleet's blue-grey stockings. So what did Stillingfleet actually wear, and what should he have worn? Okay, he wore stockings from yarn spun from combed rather than carded wool, so worsted. And this kind of wool was quite hard and uncomfortable, I guess, and a harder finish. the colors black, white, and blue were quite common colors. And in fact, the blue was more a grayish blue than the blue that we have on the backdrop here for the slides. Up to the 1730s, the stocking colors usually complemented the color of the suit or dress. So you got to coordinate, don't you? And after that, which is interesting, the white stockings were more worn with formal dress. So we had, before that, stocking colors complementing the color of the suit or dress, or black for more formal wear, and then white. And if you think about it, that also came in with the introduction of cotton as well, but also silk. The worsted stockings that Stillingfleet wore were the stockings really of the people who were less well off, and also they were dyed in a cheap dye called indigo dye. Right. So I guess as a symbol, why am I going through this? Is because my motivation is twofold. On the one hand, I am planning in a later event of many events that are going to follow this launch to propose a knitting session to knit blue stockings. Blue stockings were either sewn from the finer material, which you can see on the screen, or knitted, in fact, in a quite complicated way, if you can see the drawing there. So I'm working on this to organize this. So knitters amongst you, beware, I will be calling upon you. But the other aspect of this is slightly more intellectual or scholarly, because the term blue stockings clearly from the 17th century onwards already had a slightly pejorative meaning, as in more common, cheaper, handmade. And if we think about the term blue stockings, particularly also how it has traveled from the 18th century to the 21st century, there is clearly a development from the positive labeling of a loose group of men and women who focused on intellectual pursuits, on translation and publishing, to actually a more general term in the 1770s, as Gary Kelly has shown, to label learned women in general. But then around the 1790s, no surprise there, the label of learned women in general became a more pejorative term, the dangerously intellectual manly woman, and a trend, of course, that produced a range of vicious satire, and Lizzie's book has really referred to that. So if you think about the term blue stocking nowadays, of course, it's either learned woman or also kind of a feminist. And again, this has a pejorative meaning. So I try to trace the kind of implications of the blue stockings of Stillingfleet back to from the 18th century and earlier to the 21st century, to see also how the blue stockings really had to battle with gender expectations and gender stereotypes and gender ideologies at the time. Yeah, and we hope that the letter collection will facilitate more research into this. Now, next is why you're all here, which is the introduction to the inventory that we have produced, and also to the website and the first batch of letters that we are offering for you to look at. And I thank the technical team, Anna Senkev, Jack Orchard and Alexander Roberts, who have worked really hard in making this work and making this available to our launch today. So off you go.
Hello. Over the past 18 months, I've been compiling the inventory of all the known letters written by Montagu. As it currently stands, we have 4,146 individual entries from over that currently held in over 20 archives, libraries and private collections worldwide. I made a slight error on the slide there. The letters range from 1732 to 1799 as it currently stands, with 107 unique correspondents, plus some as yet unidentified recipients. The inventory records are used for the main database, which you'll find out a little bit more about later. The inventory is going to be made searchable online, so that even if not all the letters are up right now, anyone can search the inventory and find out all the letters that Montagu wrote for over six decades. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, you can imagine it. You can imagine the slide. So the next slide, oh, there we go. It's the Excel spreadsheet. This is the master inventory. The columns run from A to AR, and all the relevant information you can possibly imagine is contained in that, in these columns here. The most important ones for most of us are the date the letters were written, where they were written from, and where they were written to. Initially, this information has been taken from records kept by the libraries and archives, but as our individual section editors go through the letters, we're making changes, and we're making quite a lot of changes all the time. If I could have the next slide, please. Every single letter that gets edited, for every single letter, this form is completed, accompanied with certainty values for if a year or something is not quite, we're not quite certain, but it's as close as we can get to a really comprehensive look at when all of these letters were written. We are correcting earlier letters, we are providing new information. This data set is getting richer all the time. And I keep saying as it currently stands, as the inventory currently stands, and I think that's really important. The inventory won't ever be complete. It's a work in progress. And all the time we are uncovering new letters. Last year we thought that there were no letters in the Folger library. There turns out to be about 30 or so. We thought there were a handful of letters at Harvard, and an improved search function on their website led us to find out there are 100 letters. And we're currently following some new leads for some boxes that haven't been looked at since the 1980s. So we're hopefully going to be updating all the time. So this is just the starting point, and it's really exciting because 4,146 letters is just today, and we'll see where tomorrow brings. And now over to Jack.
Thanks very much. Could we have the next slide, please? Okay, so before Alexander takes us through the website, I'm just going to take a second to talk about the type of data which we're storing in the database. First of all, we collect information under unique letter ID numbers, where we store information about the recipient of the letter, the date and location that it was sent, and if possible, the date and location of its reception too. We also store the essential archival information necessary for identifying the original manuscript of each letter. And we're also storing bibliographical data of all the books which Elizabeth Montagu discusses in her letter. We're also storing data about the locations Montagu mentions in her letters, as well as the places she wrote to and from, and the locations of birth and death for all of the individuals who occur in the correspondence. And where possible, we're trying to link the places mentioned in Montagu's letters to real-world locations, as you'll see when Alexander takes us through the website. And then finally, we're also collecting biographical information about all the individuals mentioned in Montagu's letters. So you can see so far we have 711 people stored in the collection. As well, so these are people mentioned in her letters as well as the people that she writes to. We store basic biographical information about the date and location of their birth and death, as well as the link data, which is essential in communicating with other digital projects. And we're also preserving data on the relationships between people, familial relationships, businesses, friendships, etc., in order to construct a network of Montagu's wider circle. And here at the bottom of the slide, you can see an example of the type of conclusion that we're able to draw from this data. So this is a pie chart of all the locations from which Montagu wrote letters. And as you can see here, the lion's share of the letters where the location is known is at Sandalford Priory, her Berkshire estate. But then you can see we've also got sort of significant representation from her house at Hill Street and also Tunbridge Wells which she frequented on various rest cures taking the waters. So could I have the next slide, please? I'd also like to give you a brief overview of Transcribus, which is the automatic handwriting recognition software which we've been using for transcribing Montagu's letters. Using a combination of probability and the analysis of individual pen strokes, Transcribus is able to reproduce handwriting as machine-readable text. So as you can see on the left-hand side, when we started using it in 2018, our model was only trained on 20,000 words of corrected transcription, and the result is a bit wonky and it has quite a few spelling errors. If you fast forward to 2020, when we've shown the program 250,000 words of correct transcription, the result is almost perfect, even preserving the minutiae of the punctuation and spacing. However, as you can see from this example at the bottom of a particularly scratchy and damaged letter from Elizabeth Montagu to Dr. Messenger Munsey, when we have problematic letters where the text is damaged or it's in a difficult to recognize hand, we still run into problems every now and then. And now, yes, I'll hand over to Alexander to talk about the website.
Thanks, Jack. I'm going to share my screen with a pre-recorded demo of the website. So just bear with me while I negotiate Zoom's vagaries. Okay.
We're not hearing it, Alexander.
Alex, we can't hear you.
Okay, as I say, negotiating the vagaries. I'm very sorry. I'm just going to check that here we are. Audio settings. Just testing. Test speaker and microphone. I should be sending the audio. I wonder about whether or not you could play the video at your end, please. You can click through to the bookshelf. Hello and welcome to the MCO launch. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our website to this audience, and I'd like to start by taking you quickly through the homepage. We've got a range of links along the top, and you can click on these and descend into different areas of the website. We've got our Twitter stream coming through on the right-hand side. We've got a general introduction here and some contact details to get in touch with the project, both the actual project email address and with the digital humanities team at Swansea that's responsible for looking after the website and hosting it. So these top links, the home and MCO logo here take you back to the homepage as you'd expect. The project link takes you through to a page about the project, where you can find out more about what the aims of the project are. You can click through and find out more about the project team and all of our editorial board and advisory board and those friends of the project. You can click through and find out more about our funders and partners on the project, the libraries, archives, special collections and museums. Then the next link along, you can click on and access the Montagu biography. It's an introduction to Elizabeth Montagu for general and specialist readers. you can click through to a page that describes more about the portrait of Elizabeth Montagu, various portraits, and information about this is included on the page. You can click through and find out about the Blue Stocking Circle itself, very important. You can click through to the bookshelf, and this lists all of the works that are mentioned across the correspondence as collated in our database that runs behind the scenes. You can click on one of these links and be taken through to general information about this work and where a work is available online, in this case via Google Books. You can access it from within the website itself and read it, or you can click on the link to be taken off to that website itself. Next, the edition itself. There is a general introduction from our editor-in-chief, Nicole Pohl. There's links through to the sections as they grow. There's a link through to our editorial conventions, listing all of the annotation and those special markings in our marked up texts and their explanations. If I just go back. And the correspondence, the significant correspondence mentioned in the body of the correspondence itself. In this case, our first section being that devoted to Hester Thrall Piozzi. If I click on this, you're taken through to a comprehensive essay on Montagu's friendship and relationship with Hester Lynch Thrall Piozzi, with links in the text to supporting information as you'd expect. And you can also click here to view the letters between Montagu and Piozzi here. Next we have the people link. This lists all of the people mentioned in the correspondence, be they historical or Montagu's contemporaries. I can click on one of the names here, Elizabeth Carter in this instance, and find out information about that person, a biographical entry relative to their importance for the Montagu correspondence, with links out to various authorities such as the Oxford DNB and Wikipedia to find out more, a list of the letters where that person appears as a recipient, and I can click through to the letters themselves from here to find out more. Okay, I'm not going to click on the inventory for a moment. I'm just going to go straight to the letter map. This is a map showing the origins and locations of letters. O signifies origin, R signifies receipt of a letter, and this will be building out over time to show even more information about individual letters. And at a glance, it being based on the Google Map API, you can zoom out and see those locations around the world where letters were being sent and received. I'm just going to go back. The next top level link is teaching and learning. Teaching activity covers current projects and opportunities for collaboration with the project. Also, check back here for updates on a regular basis. And teaching resources, as you'd expect, includes published letters, secondary sources, and digital projects. Okay, onto the inventory itself. The inventory pages the database results relating to our catalogue of the comprehensive correspondence of Montagu. In this case, we're showing 4,140 records. You can click on any one of these letters and be taken through to a page. The title will take you through to a page that lists its origin, when it was sent, its destination, and at the moment, people mentioned in the letter and their relationship to Montagu in this case. Let's just go back for a second to the main list. Okay, the inventory also shows the location from which it was sent. You can click on this link and be taken through to a map view that shows you the origin. Let's just zoom in a little bit. So origin was Sandalford Priory, and it was going to Deadman's Place, Southwark. Let's just go back. That opened in a new tab. Some links open in new tabs, some links open in the same tab. So something to just be aware of. We've got dates on the right hand side here. And we've also got a link through to the letter itself. So I'm clicking on number 3 here. Okay, and the letter's now loaded. I've got the option at the top to view the facsimile for this letter, either in a new tab, in which case those that are working on separate monitors might wish to do that and view the letter transcription and facsimile side by side, or you can view it on the page itself, and that's what I'm doing here. I've got some controls for this facsimile which allow me to zoom in, zoom out. I can click on this home button to return me to a standardized view of the material. I can also go and page forward through the different pages that make up this transcription and its associated facsimile, in this case 3 pages. I can click on this button here to go full screen, and I can move through the material. I can also use this section at the top here to cycle through the facsimile itself, and again I can page through the material using these buttons at the top. I can exit full screen mode here, and that'll return me back to the on-page view. Again, you've got this red box here that allows you to view the material, and I can also use these mouse buttons here, or even indeed just drag the material up and down to view it. The letter view itself, I've got the title of the letter here, I've got the page numbers as they go down the page here, and I've also got links to footnotes, which one, if I hover, if I click on them, this takes me to the bottom of the page, and I can then click on these little arrows to return to that section where I was in the text. And I've also got links to people's names. Clicking on these people's names will take me to the biographical entry for that person, and where I find, as I showed before, their significant dates and other associated information for that person, such as their gender, the authorities, and the letters that they're mentioned within. Beyond this, there's plenty more to come over the next weeks and months. We're constantly developing this resource. We're excited to show off where we are right now with it all. And the next significant developments will be around search, a calendar that you'll be able to search through to locate letters by date, improvements to the maps, and the next clutch of BT letters to come online. Thank you very much for watching.
Thanks so much, Alex. That's brilliant. Could we have the next slide? I'm sure it will come. Thank you again to the team. This was really hard work. It took us a long time to figure out how best to use technology to open up the letters and give all the information that we have, and also make the technology flexible as well. The people who worked on the Montagu letters, particularly in the hunting library, know that the boxes are full of little notes talking about the dating and the correct sequence of the correspondence exchanges, and therefore we have to adapt the dating whenever possible to make it as correct as possible. I very briefly wanted to speak about the structure of the editing process. Because Elizabeth Montagu was such a prominent correspondent, she corresponded with everyone that one needed to know in the 18th century, we have rather a lot of letters. So this will be, as we all said before, a project that will take some time. So what we thought we would do is concentrate on sets of correspondence. So you've just seen that we have a batch of the Piozzi letters. Then the next one will be the letters to James Beattie. And then we have the family letters in the British Library, and the Duchess of Portland letters as well. So Montagu to the Duchess of Portland. So you can see that there's a logic in this, because otherwise we would not really manage to edit and transcribe and edit all the letters at once. So we're doing it in correspondent batches. However, we will by May next year have all the letters photographed, digitized, and hopefully also transcribed from the Huntington Library in California, and will make them available to the readers. Obviously, this is open access, so you can search them. Of course, as I just said, the actual editing process will take much longer, but at least users will have that opportunity to search the letters and also have the inventory to play around with the information available there. I hope, Ambara, could I have the next slide, please? I'm not sure if you can hear me. If not, it's not the end of the world as we know it. Thank you so much. So, little riddle, I've seen that there's a Twitter storm out there, particularly after I suggest that we all have to get knitting. Don't know why. I think we will have a lot of knitters out there. But Montagu's correspondence, I ask you to, perhaps you can do this on Twitter, you can do this for yourself. I don't know if you can do this in the chat or in questions and answers, to see if you can in fact identify those lovely correspondents here. So this is the first slide of a number of very prominent people. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about who these people are. And then could we have the next slide, please? Thank you so much. Again, one of them at least you should now recognize, lovely Sarah Scott, or Scotty as I call her, given that I spent about 14 years with her. Yay, there are people who are already, George Littleton, Duchess of Portland, Hester Thrale, Elizabeth Carter on the first slide. You are brilliant. Right, and then the next slide people can try as well to identify the paintings. So this is the workflow as we intend it. So to make all the letters from the Huntington available digitally, hopefully also with the transcriptions, but edit, annotate, and work through the letters by correspondence. So my call to you all is, and I can see on Twitter, people are like, I know who this is. That's fantastic. Well-informed viewers here. My appeal to you is, if you are interested in participating in this project, if you have experience in transcribing and editing 18th century letters, please contact me, because we are continuously looking for section editors. Section editors means that the people are working on specific correspondences, and we would love to work with you. And please do email me if you can, And if you have questions as well, don't be shy, just email any kinds of questions. That would be fantastic. So last not least, before we have some questions, I guess we all want to raise a glass, although in my case, a mug, I'm afraid, because I'm in my office and I didn't quite get to getting a glass. Joanna has a posh glass. Joanna, raise the glass to Elizabeth Montagu, to all of you as well, who are supporters of this project, and to the team. Thank you so much, and over to you all. Thank you also to Anbara and Torch and the Voltaire Foundation to make this possible. There will be future events like several conferences next year, and all the information will be on the website. And we also will have some quasi-salon events with specific themes and topics, and they will run via the Swansea University website. So again, information will be tweeted and Facebook and whatever, all of that. So does anyone have any lovely questions? Apart from that, everyone try to identify who the people are. I guess questions could come up in the chat, couldn't they? I have no questions here. I've got a lot of tweets saying someone needs to bake Jenny Batchelor needs to bake the stockings, that's fine, but Sophie Colombo says congratulations and raises a glass as well. She, of course, is from the opening the Mary Hamilton letters. So it doesn't seem to be any questions here, but does anyone want to say anything? Oh, here we are. New discoveries. So how many, shall I start from the beginning? So Susan Carlyle, hello Susan. It's lovely to hear from you. How many people are doing this work now? So we are the core team, but we have a body of section editors. How many are there? About 10 at the moment. And what we've done is we teamed up people as well, because some of the sections of the editors of the letters are quite a lot. So we're working in 2s or 3s on some of the correspondences, but we're always looking for more. And then Gillian Pink has asked, do you consider at any stage including the passive correspondence in the edition? Do you mean, I presume, the other side? I presume that means that. We will, not at the moment, we will focus on the letters by Elizabeth Montagu. They're enough. But obviously we have the images of the other side as well, of the respondents. Yeah.
We have a question in the chat box, Nicole. Well, 2 questions. One is to ask about, can we say anything about some of the new discoveries?
Yes, which I think Anna is the person to ask, because Anna and I one day, where's Anna gone? There she is. Sat in my office, which you can see behind me, the messy one, going, oh, let's just order some letters, you know, some digital images really quickly from, which library was it, Anna?
It was at Harvard.
Harvard. And sadly, or not sadly, we found how many more? About 100?
About 100, yeah.
Yeah. So what we discovered is that when you have electronic catalogs, sometimes even within that, letters can be hidden. So which ones were there we discovered? Because I can't remember now.
Well, for me, I was quite excited. There's a load more letters to David Garrick and to,
that's right.
Garrick than the ones that were known as the V&A. So that's really exciting for me.
Yes.
So we've started today saying that Piozzi letters are up, and we've had this collection of about 38 Piozzi letters. They're going to be joined by 3 more shortly, because we found that there are 3 more letters that were not in the John Rylands collection, and they're at Harvard.
Okay.
So
can you stop finding letters?
Can I show this, Nicole? This is a little newspaper cutting dated 1984 that fell out of a book I bought. It says family record sent to archives. And as a result of this, Anna's discovered 15 boxes of Montagu letters and documents that were sent up from Hawes Bank to the Tyne and Wear archives. We don't think they've ever opened them.
Wow, this is just amazing.
Another big.
So watch this space. I know, Alex is like my head. So it is amazing, isn't it? So you're just brilliant that you found this. I remember that there was a special panel at the BSEX where someone presented on how long the Horace Walpole letters took to edit. And I was quite interested to learn that it was 50 years. So this is what I'm aiming at, really. Right, I'm white already, and then we pass it on to the young people. So transcribers is also used by the Georgian papers. We, however, have recently learned, Alex, isn't it right, that it might become a commercial enterprise and not a free one?
I think it already is, to be honest. It's difficult for me to determine exactly what the status is. I think there's a pay-for offering and a free offering. Anyone out there that knows, it would be brilliant. I'm trying to find out myself, but it's still available for us to use on the project. And I think to other people, the website's still up. So there's a sort of pay-for offering and a free offering at the moment, as far as I can determine.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just speak a bit?
Yes.
So the universalizability of transcribers, basically, as different projects have been using transcribers, they've been using the different hands that they've been getting trained on for individual projects like ours to produce a generic master 18th century hand. So basically, incrementally, it's going to get better and better at each new type of manuscript that it's introduced to.
And I think the question also was, as far as I understand from Cassie, is if one can use it alongside published letters. Now, we are trying to make that link to published letters, and there's quite a, Jack and Alex know this, is there's quite a straightforward way of linking our letters to published letters as well. So watch that space.
Nicole, I see there's a letter from Mike Cousins.
Yes.
I'm very intrigued with the unknowns. Can we have a collective folder where we can look and possibly help identify? I think that sounds really good. Do you remember when the TLS used to have a competition at the back, and all the academics used to go on and try and do this terribly arcane competition, and then they'd win some, what were they, these wonderful books?
Oh, Folio.
Folio Society books. Well, I think there's a whole lot of people out there who would love to compete to see if they could identify our unknowns.
Absolutely. My cousin, by the way, is one of the section editors. So hello, Mike. Definitely, that's a really good idea, because we have a section of letters that are completely undated. So we keep them as undated at the moment, but also they are unknowns. And Betty Schallenberg recently approached us and said she's also worked on the enclosures of the letters as well. So what was in it and not. So we will somehow try to find a way of recording this as well. And and then
that's a really interesting point of Betty's, because there's so much poetry being enclosed in these letters.
So we will find a way of recording this as well. You can see that it takes a lot of time and people working sort of as part of their job. None of us are free to do this 100%. Whereas the Walpole, as I've learned with great dismay, that's all he did all day. So that's different. And then Nicholas Cronk, hello Nicholas, from down the road, asked what the favourite letter is. I don't know.
What about Lizzie? Has she got a favourite letter?
Lizzie, yeah, pass this on.
It's very difficult. I think her letter to Keynes about the history of ornament is fascinating, and it appears published but without being acknowledged. and that's shows her relationship to the Scottish Enlightenment, to Adam Smith and Hume and so on. But then I also love her most intimate letters to Elizabeth Carter, where she talks about taking wing on a witch's broomstick.
That's really, thanks Lizzie. I think because I worked on the Scott letters so much, there are two letters that spring to mind. There's when she describes the neighbour's fat legs, which I quite like. And then when Lady Barbara Montagu, her life partner, died, and I was in the Huntington Library, and I tried not to dribble my tears onto the actual manuscript letters because I was so moved. This is also why the digital editions is quite useful, because if you cry or you don't ruin them. I hope Steve Hindle isn't listening to it. I did not dribble over the papers, but you know how it is, you get really involved with the...
You softy.
I am. So I think we probably need to finish soon. We had about 60 people attending this event, which is really fantastic. And thank you again to the team, to the Voltaire Foundation, and also to Torch, to allowing us to present this project to a large audience. And we hope to hear from you soon in forms of email, tweets, whatever. And we will post information about the other events that we're going to do, small talks, little salon discussions, and this is like the bake-off one, isn't it? Get knitting. I just have to find the right pattern somehow. So thanks to the team for all your hard work. This is really fantastic. And another bubbly out of the mug.